Hello, guys, welcome once again to another episode in the Becoming a Career Note series where we cover a lot of amazing resources aimed at helping you become a very efficient career developer. Last week we started like the chapter 2 of the career book, the common programming concepts, and we were opportune to like look into variables, data types, functions, and so on and so forth, right? In today's episode, we're going to be continuing the particular chapter, mostly specifically touching on comments and control flow, right? So if this is your first time joining the series, I would encourage you go back to check the previous episodes before coming back to this particular one. And as always, if you enjoy like the content we put out, I am pleading, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you are informed every time we drop a new video. And with that, let's get started. So the first subchapter we're going to be looking at is comments. Now, comments are like super important to you as a developer or a programmer, as they give you the ability to like leave extra explanation as regards like what your code or your code logic is doing, right, to like other developers or people who stumble upon your code, and they're created in such a way, right, that they are part of your code base but are totally ignored like by the compiler. Now there are like three types of comments you're going to probably like encounter in different Cairo code bases. So one is like the simple comments, which is usually used like to just leave a little explanation, right, on a code logic or something right within a function. You have like the item level documentation, which is probably used for giving more hints as regards, let's say, function, iterate, and implementation and stuff like that, right? And finally, you have like the module level documentation, basically, which is basically used for giving extra explanations for modules and stuff like that. Yeah, so we're going to be going into our code base and we're going to be like creating like a new scaffolder for stuff we're going to be doing today, right? And we are going to probably play around comments, right? So different types of comments, so like we get used to how that works. All right, so we're going to be moving into our code editor, and yeah, so the first thing we're going to be doing basically is let's come here and update this, right? So BAC 3, and this is going to be common programming concepts II. All right, so I'm going to see the out of this. So this was from our last video. Just clear this and remove the caps lock. All right, so I'm just going to be creating a new scaffolder. So I'm just going to, for now, I'm just going to call them, let me call them comments, right? So we don't get shouted at by scap, okay? And it's going to be a career test, okay? So I'm going to, oh, right. Sorry, this was created within the comment folder. I'm going to just delete that. We didn't move out. I didn't really notice that. Oh, right, okay. So let's do that again. Scap new comments. Cairo test. Yep. So I'm going to just to stick to like our existing standard, right? Gonna rename this. Let's rename this to BC3. All right. So moving into BC3, as always, I'm just going to, okay, I'm going to clear lib.cairo. Come here, create a new file. Let's call this comments.cairo. And as we've always done, right, we're going to go into our lib and specify mod comments here. Yep. Okay. So as I was saying, right, there are like quite like some types of comments you're going to encounter in career code bases, and just to make things simple, I'm going to go into one of let's say our examples from the last episode. So let's just check functions as career. So I'm going to just I'm going to copy this and paste this in comments, right? So let's just try to comment that what we wrote last time. So for the simple comments, right, I could just simply say, for example, the simple comment is really done with like 2 dash, right? So I can say, okay, there's function subtracts 2 numbers, and that's how you can leave like a comment. So when you add the two line, it basically like comments every single thing on like this particular line of code. Well, let's say you're trying to like your comment is spanning multiple lines. So let's say this is very long. So basically this function subtracts to number which, let's say, okay, let's say which now it's probably spanning both lines. I can say which are both felt to, sorry, which are both you in 16th, right? So this is how you would probably like write comments that span multiple lines. You can also like comment, let's say you want to leave a comment near a line, right? Okay, you don't want to comment the whole line. I could just simply come here and do something like, okay, this macro prints out the value of z. Okay, so the next type of comment, right, is the item level documentation comment I talked about, right, which is basically used to like let's say comment functions, implementation, traits, and stuff like that. Now this type of comment is basically like done using like the 3 dash. So I could do something like this, and I would say, okay, already wrote this previously, right? But this function subtract numbers. I could even go for that to specify the parameters, and x, okay, this is a UN 16 value, right? And y, okay, this is a UN 16 value, and probably say it returns like a UN 16 value. So this is how you would want to like comment stuff like functions, implementations, and all that stuff. So we've not yet looked into implementations and traits. We're going to be looking into that in like subsequent chapters. Now the last type of comments, right, is probably how you would, let's say, comment like a module. So let's say I have like so in Cairo we have stuff we call modules, right, which we're going to be looking at too in subsequent chapters. Well, let's say I have a module called mine, right, and I want to like comment this module. You would usually do that, right, using like the syntax. So the double slash and an exclamation mark. So with this I could say this is my module. All right, so that's basically all you need to know about writing comments, right? So remember 2 slashes for like simple comments, 3 slashes for functions, implementation, traits, and 2 slashes and an exclamation mark for like modules. All right, so the next thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at control flows. But before we look at control flows, let's go back into the career book. I think we probably have like a little quiz to take. So let's just head back into this and let's check out our quiz. All right, so it says, what is the syntax introducing a comment? We already looked at this, right? The double slash, and let's submit. So the answer is correct, and that's all for comments. Next up, we're going to be looking into control flow. So control flows are another very important concept in like programming. So when we talk about control flow, we're basically talking about the flow your code logic follows or a particular program follows, right? And it's usually dependent on if one or two condition is satisfied. So for example, I could write a simple code logic that says if Darlington is a boy, print boy, else print girl, right? And it checks if Darlington is a boy, and if Darlington is not a boy, it's going to print girl. So this is actually super important when writing very robust programming applications, right? And that's why it's something that is also supported by Cairo. So within like Cairo, we have like we could divide the control flow into like 2 major building blocks, right? So we have like the if construct, and we have like the loops construct. So under loops we have the loop keyword, the while loop, which are probably like familiar with, the for loop, and yeah, I think that's it. So we're going to be starting with like the if expressions of the if construct, and we're going to proceed from there. So following the career book says an if expression allows you to branch your code depending on certain conditions. So you provide a condition and then state if this condition is met, run this block of code. If this condition is not met, not run this block of code. So okay, let's just dive into our code editor and basically explore how the if expression works. All right, so back into our code editor. what we're going to be doing first is we're going to be creating a new file. Let's call this file controlflow.cairo. Okay, and as always, we're going to go back into lib. Remember, this is how you expose your files to like the compiler. So we're going to call this mode control flow. Okay, once we have that thing, we're going to go back into our control flow and we want to create a simple program that uses the if expression. All right, so I'm going to create, as always, the main function, right? And once we have the main function, let's create a number. So once say, okay, let number equal to 10. All right, and I want to do something. I want to say, okay, if number, right, is equal to 10, what we want to do, right, is we want to print, we're going to print okay, let's just say the number is 10, right? And if not, else we're going to say print line wrong number. So when we try to run this, let's see, in our terminal, right, using scarp carry run. Oh, sorry, we need to move into the BAC3 folder. Yeah, and now let's try again, scarp cairo run. Now it compiles and afterwards it runs. So you can see it prints 4. Why 4? Oh, I think should be coming from Y4. Something is wrong. Oh, that's weird. Oh, right, running comments. Do we comment anything? Comments. Oh, right, so this is weird, but we'll have to, yeah, we're just going to have to comment that. So let's just have mode control flow for now, and let's clear that and run this. So as you can see, it now prints out the number is 10. So basically what's happening is the compiler goes through your logic, and as you can see, it comes here, it checks, okay, is number equal to 10? If yes, it prints the number, and then like it totally exits like this if construct, right? Otherwise it's going to check the else statement. So okay, let's say if this number was 5, let's try to run this again. So clear scarp cairo run, and we run that again. So you're going to see it's going to check if so first of all it checks this this particular if block, right? So it checks number is not equal to 10. All right, so it runs like the else statement, and that's the reason why we have wrong number. So with the if statement, you can also run multiple logic. So for example, we can let's say we want to account for the number 5, right? We can say else, we can come here and say else, right? Else if sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my hand. If number is equal to 5, right, we want to print line, okay, we want to print the number is 5, okay. So now let's try to run that. So now we're trying to account for the number 5. So what we expect that's going to happen, right, is it's going to check this first block of code. Now the number is not equal to 10, so it's going to skip it. It's going to come to check this next block of code. The number is equal to 5, it's going to print this, otherwise it prints this. So let's run that again. So we're going to clear and run scarp cairo run, and as you can see, it runs the number is 5. And you can also use the if statement within, like, sorry, the if expression, right, within the let statement. A good example, so I could say let x be equal to, so if we want to say if number, right, is equal to 5, we want our x to be equal to number. We're going to just say else we want it to just be 6, right? Now if we try to print let's try to print we're going to try to print the value of x, right? And let's go again, scarp Cairo run. So you're going to see it says the number is 5, and in here it prints out 5. So because the value is 5, prints out 5. So but let's assume we change this value, right? So let's say 7. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to clear and I'm going to run it again. So what's going to happen is first we're going to get wrong number because the value is neither 10 nor 5, so it defaults to the else block statement, which prints out wrong number, and also x defaults to 6 because number is not equal to 5. So that's basically how you play around with the if construct. The next thing we're going to be looking at is the loop construct, where we look at the loop keyword, the while keyword, and like the for keyword. So let's go back to like the Cairo book. Now, so loops are a very useful construct for cases where you want to run or repeat a particular line of code more than once, right? And Cairo has like 3 kinds of loops. We have the loop keyword for when you want, like I said, basically allowing for like when you want to repeat your logic, right, more than once. But the while loop is basically like a sort of conditional loop, and you probably use like the for loop in cases where you want to, like, let's say, loop through an array or stuff like that. We're going to be looking through like going through like these different types of loops in this particular section. All right, so let's head back into our code editor. Okay, so in our control flow, right, I'm just going to comment all this out. So the reason I'm commenting it, so it will probably be available when I kind of like push it to the GitHub repository. Okay, so within our main function, the first thing we're going to do is use like the loop keyword. So this is how we use the loop keyword basically. So let's say I want to run hello world repeatedly. So we can do that using like the loop keyword. Now this code logic you see here is pretty much dangerous, since it would basically result in an infinite loop, right? But luckily with smart contracts, the execution of functions require gas, so you could say this would run till like the available gas is let's say finished or used, right? So let's try running that. So if we run scarp Cairo run, so you're going to see it's going to repeat hello world, hello world, hello world, hello world, or probably till like it uses out like computer memory. So I'm just going to close that and I'm going to clear that. All right, so but we can do more useful stuff with loops, right? So a very good example is, okay, let's say I want to print out on the terminal, right, numbers from 1 to 10. All right, so I'm just going to clear this out, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. Now let's call this variable. This variable is going to be like UN32, right? So let's call that variable I, and I'm going to set it to 0. Now what I'm going to do, right, is I'm going to create a loop, right? Now I'm going to initialize this out of my loop. Forgot we already created the loop earlier. All right, so out of the loop I'm going to create this, right, this variable I, set it to 0. Then I'm going to create this loop. Now the first thing we want to do, right, is we want to set a condition for when this loop will end, or basically what we call break. So I'm going to say, okay, if I is greater than 10, what do I want to do? I want to break this code. So I just want to end the loop. So the break keyword is what you use like to end the loop. So we're saying, okay, if I is greater than 10, I want to just break out of this loop, right? So but if so as always with the if block of code, right, so it's going to check if this logic is satisfied. If not, what do we want to do? So what we're going to do is we're going to say let I, right, but okay, before then, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply like print out the value of I, right, and I'm going to reset the value of I. So I'm just going to add 1 to it. So what we're saying is, if I is greater than 10, break out of the loop. Otherwise, I want you to print the value of I, and I want you to add 1 to this value of I. So it's going to continue till like this loop, till this condition is satisfied before we can break out of that loop. Now let's try running that using scarp cairo run, and it's going to compile. And yeah, so as you can see, it starts from the value 0, it prints out, it comes here, is I greater than 10? No, so this doesn't break. So it prints out the value of I, which is 0, right? Then it adds 1 value to it, and we go back again to start from the beginning. Now I is 1, is 1 greater than 10? No, so it doesn't break. It prints out the value of 1, adds it to I, and it goes back again to continue. So that's basically how you want to use a loop. Now when I gets to 11, right, 11 is greater than 10, and then it breaks. So the resulting value, as you can see, right, is it prints out from 0 to 10. So that's how you basically would want to like use the loop keyword. And also you can actually return values from a loop. So how you want to do that is, for example, I'm going to say let x be equal to loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if I is greater than 10, I want to return I. So if I is equal to 10, I want to return I, right? So at this point where we break, we want to return the value of I, which is greater than 10, and it's going to be set to this value x. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come here, I'm going to say print, let's print that value of x. Now let's see what we're going to get. Now we're going to clear our terminal once again and run scarp cairo run. Now it compiles, and then we get our values. So as you can see, now we print 0 to 11, and that is because we ran 0 to 10, and where I was now greater than 10, right, we just returned the value of I to x and we printed that. And that's how you would basically want to return values from a loop. Now let's go back to our Cairo book and see what else we are probably missing. So yeah, back in the Cairo book, we've already looked at repeating coded loop. Alright, so I also forgot to do this, right? So we talked about how a smart contract function continues to execute, right, until like the available gas is like finished. So if you want to like replicate something like that on your terminal, you can basically like use the available gas prompt, right? So passing in like the available gas you want to use to like the gas you want to use to run that particular program or function or whatever. All right, so we already looked at most of this. We've already looked at returning values from loop. Oh, we forgot to mention the continue keyword. So the continue keyword is basically used in cases where you want to, let's say, skip a particular let's say a particular loop operation and move on to the next let's say the next operation or iteration. Let's go back to our code editor. Let me like demonstrate how this works. So back in our code editor, right, so we have this value. We say if I is greater than 10, we want to break out, right? So we can also say if I, for example, is equal to 5. What we want to do is we want to do, first of all, we're going to need to add the value of I. Also is going to always keep being 5, so we're going to add 1 to the value of I, increment the value of I, then we're going to just say continue, right? So what's going to happen is when it gets to where I is equals to 5, the value is not going to print, and it's just going to continue to like the next iteration where I is equals to 6. Now let's try that and see if that works. So I'm going to clear run scarp cairo run, and now let's see what happens. So as you can see, it runs 0 1 2 3 4, it skips 5, and we continue from 6 7 8 9 10 11. So that's where you would want to use the continue keyword. Basically, if you want to skip a particular iteration of the loop, use the continue keyword. Now back again into the Cairo book. Alright, so we already looked at how you can return values from loop. The next thing we're going to be looking into is conditional loops with while. So the while statement is really used, right, where like with the while statement, with the while what's it called, the while statement, right, you probably want to pass in like a particular value that evaluates to a boolean. That's why it's basically called conditional loops. Now let's also demonstrate how that would work basically on in our terminal. So sorry, in our code editor. So heading back to our code editor, what we're going to do is in here, okay, so what we want to do, let's just comment this out too, just so it doesn't interrupt or interfere with the what we're getting printed out on the terminal. All right, so I'm going to say we want to have a number, right? Let's say this number is equal to 5. Now we're going to say while number is let's say greater than, or okay, yeah, let's just say yeah, we could use greater than 0. So while number is greater than 0, let's see. Oh, right. So let's just say while number is not equal to 0, right? At least the compiler doesn't shout at us for that. All right. So while number is not equal to 0, we want to print this particular value. So let's print. Okay. Let's print hello world. Sorry, I just like this is the default thing that comes to mind. Okay, so while number is not equal to 0, we want to print out hello world. What we're also going to do, right, is remember I want to also subtract the value of number. Sorry, let's make this immutable, right? So what we're saying here basically is we're using the while construct, and like I said, the condition you pass in has to evaluate to like a boolean. For example, say while number is not equal to 0, right? So we want to do this, so it's going to check is when number is 5, is equal to 0. No, it's going to print hello world, and it's going to continue to like number is equals to 0. So now let's try to run that and see what we get. So I'm going to clear my terminal and again scarp cairo run. So what we expect is it prints hello world 5 times. So let's see, 1 2 3 4 5, correct? So when it becomes 0, it no longer prints again, and that's how you basically want to use like the while loop. So the other thing we are also going to need to be looking at, right, is the for construct, or the for statement. So this is usually used, right, where you want to loop over like the elements of a collection, for example like an array. So a good example, right, is okay, let me, as always, I'm going to just comment this out. Now I'm going to instantiate a simple array. So let me call this 1 2 3 4 5. All right, now to use the what's it called, the for construct on this array, we probably want to change this to a span. So we're going to span this. All right, then we're going to say for I in array, we want to print the value of I. You can see how very simple this is. Probably if you try to use like let's say the loop construct or the while construct, it will not be as simple as this. With this, we just did it in about 4 lines of code. So now let's try to run this and see if it prints. So what we're expecting is it prints out all the members of the array, right? So we're going to clear this and we're going to run it again. Scarp cairo run. All right, so as you can see, it prints out 1 2 3 4 5. So that's it basically. That's how you would use like the for construct. Now let's dive back again into like the cairo block to see if we are missing out on anything. All right, so we looked at we've already looked at the while construct. We've looked at the for construct, looping through the for construct. All right, so yeah, with that's literally about everything we need to like cover within this particular sub chapter. Also, okay, let's look at, so there's equivalence between the loops and recursive functions. For I always like to make this reference. So for those who wrote Cairo 0, right, we didn't really have access to like the loop keyword, the while keyword, and so on and so forth. So most times when you wanted to like do stuff like this, you use like the concept of recursive function. Now recursive function, they are basically another way to like achieve something like similar to loop, right? So let's try to do something as regards recursive function. So I'm going to go back into code editor, and as always, I'm going to comment this out again. Okay, so we're going to create another function. So let's call this recursive function, right? And recursive function is going to be accepting a value. Let's say this is a uint32 value, and it's going to just be okay. Better still, yeah, let it be in 32 and return AU in 32. All right, so all we're going to be doing it's similar way. So let's say we want to do something similar to what we did earlier. So if I is like greater than 10, we want to break or something, right? So to do that, we need to specify the condition, right? So in this case, we want to say if I, in this case, okay, so we're using x, right? So if x, right, is greater than 10, what do we want to do? So we want to okay, let's just return x, right? So sorry, this is shouting. If blocks have incompatible type, call integer u32, and this, okay, are we missing out something? If this, so we want to return the value of this. I have no idea why this is shouting. Let me just confirm, right? So now let's we can also do something like okay, I recall now. So this we are trying to return u in 32 here, and we just have an if statement, so we have to have something else basically. So let's just do a simple else statement, right? So in this else statement, we want to like so if it's not greater than 10, right, so we want to simply recursively call this function, and what we're going to be passing to it, right, is whatever is x, right, plus 1. So this is basically how we can achieve something similar using a recursive function. So first off, we check that x is greater than 10, right? So once we this is basically where you did the whole break thing. So we're saying if x is greater than 10, we want to just simply break and return the value of x, right? So just for clarity's sake, let's do this. So we're going to print out let's print out the value of x here for clarity's sake, right? And I'm going to copy this too, right? And in here what I'm going to do is, yeah, okay, so let's just do this. Print out the value of x and recursively call the function. So it's going to come back in again to call this in, and in as much as x is not greater than 10, it's going to execute else, which comes back to call this again. So now in our main function, we're going to recursively call that function. So we're going to call that recursive function, sorry. So I'm going to say, okay, let's return a value, right? So let y be equal to recursive function 0. Alright, and just to remove that, I'm going to print out again. I'm going to print out the value of y. Alright, so now let's try to run this. I'm going to clear scab Cairo run. Alright, so as you can see, right, it runs, we pass in 0, so it does the same thing, right? Prints 0 to 10, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And as you can see, print 11 twice, of course, which is where we printed like the value of y. Alright, so that's basically how you can use recursive function to achieve something similar to like the loop construct. But with the loop construct, right, I don't really see any reason why you probably want to use recursive functions. But if you have a great use case for that, then that's cool. So I think that's as much as we need to cover for like control flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment this, right, because I'm going to be pushing it to GitHub. So I'm just going to uncomment this once again, and I'm going to now let's apply things with length, right? So for this, I'm going to say, okay, if let's call this the if construct, and I'm going to uncomment this, which I want to believe falls under the if construct, right? Then I'm going to, okay, this also is part of it. Then I'm going to uncomment this to right, sorry, and I'm going to just call this, let's say, while construct, and finally uncomment this, because then call this the for construct, just to ensure it's easier to follow, and then recursive function. Okay, so I'll be pushing this to GitHub. Feel free to check out the code base if you're lost or anything, and also you can always reach out to me on Twitter at Darlington or Telegram at Darlington68. Now, because of time, let's just hop back into like the career book and see if we can attempt the quiz before we call it a day. All right, so back in the career book, scrolling down, okay. So we have the quiz here. We're going to just start. So it says determine whether the program will pass the compiler. If it passes, write the expected output of the program if it's executed. So we have the main function. We have this let x is equals to 1, and we'll say let y is equals to if x 0 else 1, then print out this. Now this is not going to compile. Reason being that you can't unlike probably other programming that we previously used, right? You can't the compiler can basically infer or turn this value right to a boolean. So if you try to run this, it's going to throw an error telling you that okay, you can't convert what's it called, the failed 252 to a boolean value. So what you want to rather do to make this pass is you want to say if x is equal to 1, like as we've always done. So this is not going to compile, right? It's not going to compile. Let's submit that. So it says what happens in Cairo if an if condition evaluates to true. So the first option says the program skips the if block and executes the next block of code. That's false. The next is the program executes the block of code associated with the if condition. That's correct. The program terminates immediately. That's not correct. So our answer is going to be 2. The program executes the block of code associated with the if function. So next, what is the result of running a Cairo program with an if statement where the condition evaluates to false and no else block is provided? Okay, so what's going to happen? The program stops execution. That's wrong. The program panics. Still wrong too. The program executes an implicit else block. Still wrong too. The program skips the if block and moves on to the next bit of code. That's correct. So if the value or the logic within, or the if, basically like the if condition does not really evaluate to like true, right? So it would just basically skip that and move on to the rest of your code logic. Then finally, for the last question, it says what feature does Cairo provide for repeating code execution until a specified condition is met or gas runs out? So for that, we're looking at the loop. Okay, let's say traditional for loop, similar to those, not that. So we're looking for the loop or while with a break condition. All right, so let's submit and see if that passes. So we got this correct, we got this correct, we got this correct, and we got this correct. So congratulations, you just made another huge stride in your journey to becoming like a Cairo developer. So I would also advise you check out like there are like some little assignments. You can write out, generate the nth Fibonacci number, and you can write out a program to compute the factorial of a number. And a little hint, right? So when you run Scab or you create a new Scab like project, the code you basically find within the lib.cairo, it's a program to generate the nth Fibonacci number. But I would advise you just try that out, and you can probably cross-check against that. And so with that, we've come to like the end of this particular episode. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at common collections covering arrays and dictionaries. If you enjoyed this video, as I said earlier, do me a favor, like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you are informed every time we like drop a new video, and also to share to anyone who's like interested in learning like the Cairo programming language. Thank you so much, and yeah, see you in the next one.